What's going on? This is Theo Greminger for Player Profiler. I'm talking about some Dynasty stashes. The season's just a few days away here. These are players that I want to make sure I have on my Dynasty roster. These guys aren't necessarily guys that I'm going to be able to plug in my lineup in week 1. They might not be guys that I'm going to be able to plug in my lineup in week 8. But some of these guys down the road could be super useful for me to have for my fantasy football Dynasty rosters. And we're going to go ahead and list them here. Let's start at the top. JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy is done for the entire year. But if your dynasty roster can sustain it, JJ McCarthy, you are now able to get at a significant discount based on where you were able to get him just a few months ago. Now, JJ McCarthy is a very young player. This is a player that the Minnesota Vikings took in the first round, and this is their quarterback of the future. The roster does not have anyone who can compete with JJ McCarthy long term. Sam Darnold is set to go this year. Then besides him, you're talking about guys like Nick Mullins. JJ McCarthy, if your dynasty roster can support it, especially for you Superflex managers, this is a player that you put on your IR, and next year you're going to have a starting quarterback. And at the end of the day, JJ McCarthy is going to be throwing passes to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson behind a very strong offensive line in a system that got strong quarterback production, at least fantasy-wise, on a weekly basis out of Josh Dobbs for a number of weeks last year, and had Nick Mullins throw for an exceptional amount of yardage, let alone what they got out of Kirk Cousins in terms of touchdown passes. So J.J. McCarthy has mobility, J.J. McCarthy has the pedigree, and J.J. McCarthy has the weapons. If your roster can support him, grab him as a dynasty stash. And another quarterback we're going to talk about is Michael Pennock. Michael Pennock, the drafter that took Michael Pennock, might not be able to support him throughout the whole year. If that manager looks like they're going to win this year, they might look at Michael Pennock as a luxury that they're willing to move on from and consider trading him for some win now pieces. Now you get to Michael Pennock. This is a player that is he on the Jordan Love path? Or is he on the Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson path? Is this a player you're going to have to wait several years for? Or is this a player you're only going to have to wait 1 year for? Based on where they took him and based on the value of rookie QB contracts, I think Michael Pennock is more of a 1 year track player. I know that's an unpopular opinion, and I expect Kirk Cousins to be solid this year, but Michael Pennock is a guy who might be on the field sooner than later in Atlanta. If you can stash him, go ahead and grab him. Let's go to the tight end position. A player who I don't anticipate is going to do a whole lot this year, but it's Jared Wiley of the Kansas City Chiefs. And we've had these sort of pretenders like Noah Gray and Blake Bell. The dynasty managers have taken some shots on, thinking maybe I've got the Travis Kelce eventual replacement. But in Jared Wiley, I think they might actually have it. 6'6", 260, and runs a 4.6, 240. That's really, really good. He caught 47 passes and 8 touchdowns last year at TCU, impressed at the Senior Bowl, and the Chiefs actually used him with the first-team offense already this year in training camp. This will be another Travis Kelce season this year. Don't get it twisted. But as great as Kelce is, it's not hard to envision him hanging it up in the near future. The Chiefs have drafted their next tight end, and it's Jared Wiley, and you can get him for nothing right now in Dynasty, a cheap future rookie pick, and somebody's giving him up. Go stay at the tight end position. Cade Stover, Houston Texans. Stover is stuck behind Dalton Schultz this year. Schultz blocked the initial pathway of a young tight end when he was in Dallas as well, and that player turned into Jake Ferguson. We all know how that story turned out. Jake Ferguson, year 1 in Dallas, becomes a tight end 1. Same thing could happen with Cade Stover in Houston. Cade Stover can catch the football. He has the pedigree, and he has the locker room narrative. He's played with CJ Stroud before. He was his teammate at Ohio State. I'm looking to stash Cade Stover on my dynasty teams, especially tight end premium. He's going to gain a ton of value there. Let's go to the running back position. Tyrone Tracy. And this is a player you can stash in redraft. This is a player that you can stash on pretty much any kind of dynasty roster. I could stash him on a win now team, a rebuild team. I want players like this who don't cost a whole lot and have exceptional athleticism at the position and are on teams where nobody really wants to draft the offense. Nobody really wants New York Giants besides Malik Neighbors. But when it comes down to it, Tyrone Tracy is super interesting. Former wide receiver, plus athleticism and great straight line speed, runs a 4.48 40, left Iowa as a wide receiver, arrived at Purdue as a running back. He's 24 years old, so he's a little bit older, but we don't really care about that in Dynasty for our running backs because the windows we want to look at for these guys in terms of running back utility are always short. Tyrone Tracy, a guy I want to stash whenever. Competing with Eric Gray right now for the number 2 job, but athletically, he's so far superior. Let's take shots on Tyrone Tracy. Now, this player is going to be difficult to stash because he's gained a ton of value, but make sure that the Jaylen McMillan manager in your league knows what they have in him. And if they don't and they underrate him, make a trade offer. I traded for Jaylen McMillan last week in one of my FFPC leagues, and I got him for a lot less than I think he's worth. This is a player with incredible contingent value right away, plays behind Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. If either one of those guys went down, Jaylen McMillan would be a weekly starter for you. 3rd round pick in the NFL draft. He outproduced Jalen Polk and had more catches than Rome Odunze in 2022 at Washington as their teammate. Think about that. Jalen Polk, 2nd rounder. Rome Odunze, about as good as it gets. Alpha wide receiver 1, 1st round pick. Jaylen McMillan is going to catch a ton of passes in his NFL career. I want to make sure I have him on as many Dynasty rosters as possible. Staying at the wide receiver position, let's talk about Andre Yoshivas. And Yoshivas could get, week 1 usage because Jamar Chase is still sitting out. But Andre Yoshivas is a super interesting player. He was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list when he was at Princeton. That's some of the most athletic players in the country. Yoshivas had some weeks last year where he looked really good. He's the 4th highest ranked wide receiver on Keep Trade Cut right now on the Bengals, though. And Yoshivas kind of reminds me a little bit of year 2 Gabe Davis. And we remember the bump that he had in Dynasty. Yoshivas is going to be a slot wide receiver, but he played 90% of the time on the outside last year. So the slot role is the team saying he can take on new responsibilities and he's more versatile than maybe the market realizes. You're talking about a size, speed, athleticism combo now in the slot. I want to stash him wherever possible. I think he's going to gain a lot of value this year. Staying at Cincinnati, this player cost you more, but the long-term prospects might be better. Germaine Burton looks like the eventual replacement for T. Higgins. T. Higgins is playing on a franchise tag. When T. Higgins moves on, Germaine Burton is the next man in. Burton could be the wide receiver 2 in this offense next year. He was drafted in the 3rd round, but talent-wise, some people viewed him as an early 2nd round type talent. Burton is really good. Played at Georgia, played at Alabama, fell in the draft for kind of not anything real. It was kind of, some teams didn't like the fact that he played at a number of schools. Some teams had questions about his attitude, but there was no like real off the field issues. This is not something where you're going to deal with like a suspension. We can deal with that. Cincinnati has had several players over the years where they were viewed as values that fell to them because teams worried about whatever. And with Burton, I have a pathway to him being viable next year. He's a very talented player attached to a very good quarterback in Joe Burrow. Stash him. Going back to the running back position, let's talk about Will Shipley. Will Shipley has multiple pathways to fantasy viability in Philly. Starts the year behind Saquon Barkley, but to me, he's the handcuff to roster. If Saquon were to miss time, Shipley would see the majority of the high-value touches. With Kenny Gainwell kind of mixing in as well, but Shipley is a better player than Gainwell in every way. He's a better receiver, had better college stats, had better pedigree. Kenneth Gainwell is liked by Nick Sirianni and the coaching staffs. He would not disappear. But if Barkley missed time, Shipley would be a very, very strong player for you to have on your Dynasty roster. And I would make sure if I'm the Saquon Barkley manager, go ahead and get Will Shipley, prioritize getting him. And another player who's not even as expensive as Will Shipley, but is a player that I want to stash, sort of a discount Braylon Allen right now, is Audric Estime, a very young running back. He'll be one of the youngest running backs in the NFL this year. He has size. He has the ability to absorb volume. He fell to Denver into the 5th round because he ran a slow 40 at the combine, ran a 4.7, but he ran a 4.58 at Notre Dame's pro day. which for a back of his size is perfectly acceptable. This is a player who had more rushing yards in a single season than anyone in Notre Dame history. 18 rushing touchdowns last year at Notre Dame, 2,200 rushing yards over the last 2 seasons. Audric Estime is a guy that I really want to roster. This is a running back friendly scheme. Javonte Williams looks like he's back this year, but Javonte Williams had a career low in terms of yards per carry last year. I don't think he's long for the team. I hope you enjoyed this video. Go ahead and stash some of these players. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button. Make sure if you like my Dynasty content, you're watching Dynasty Life right here at Player Profiler, and look for videos like this all throughout the season that are going to help you win your leagues this year.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.